Hi, I'm Professor Adam Teman of the EnICS labs at Bar-Ilan University, and today we'll be going over Kahoot Merger, a tool that I wrote for collecting your Kahoot quiz report data. So let's start with the what. What is it? It's a tool to collect all the necessary data from several Kahoot reports and merge it together. So we start with these types of Kahoot reports that you can see over here. They're this very fancy Excel type of a sheet, but it just has the answers that you get or the report that you got for one Kahoot. And we're going to turn it into some other Excel. I grade out the names of the students and so forth. But as you can see here, we get all of the scores and so forth. We'll be going over such a list later. So why am I showing you this tool? Why did I spend my time to write it? Well, I use Kahoot as an in-class quiz system. I've been using it for several years now, and I give about 10 Kahoots, maybe 12 Kahoots every year in class. I actually aggregate the score or count the number of Kahoots that people participated in, and that's part of the grade of the students in the end of the year. Well, Kahoot provides each quiz in a separate Excel workbook, a really detailed report with all the data you could need. But you need to somehow collect that all together and then correlate it with the students that actually did each of the Kahoots. So I asked a student named David Peled to make me a script about it, and he wrote version 1.0, which I used for several years, and I gave him full credit for the Kahoots that year. But I actually needed all kinds of additional features, so I kind of rewrote it, and now I'm uploading version 2.0. So how do we do it? Well, it's a Python script, and it opens all the Excel files, it parses the data, and in the end, it creates a merge data structure. It also receives a separate list of student names and IDs that enables correlation between the Kahoot player names and real students. And finally, it has a plethora of features that we've run into over the years, that some of them David made, some of them I made, but just students who don't follow the naming conventions that you tell them to use, or they get disconnected and reconnected during the Kahoot and they appear several times in the report. And just in general, like I want to know how many Kahoots somebody participated in, but I don't want them to get participation credit if they didn't get enough right answers or enough of a score. So I do all this inside the script. And I want to thank the Pandas library because it gives us a really nice Excel file when we're done. So where can you find this? Well, I've open sourced it on the EnICS Labs GitHub, and here's the URL up above. And I've made extra effort to put in as many comments as possible so you can go and add your own features and use this. Really, it wasn't that easy up till now. So let's see it in action. Okay, so we're going to start with the GitHub repository. So you see it's under EnICS Labs, and it's the Kahoot Merger repository. And you can go ahead and you can clone that. And what you can see inside here is there's a main script here, merge Kahoots, and a script of functions, merge Kahoot functions. And we also have two folders, reports and students, that have some examples that you can start with. So what you're actually going to do is you're going to go and log into your Kahoot website, okay? And on your dashboard over here, you can see that there's a menu item that says reports. So we'll click on that. And what you can see is you can see all the latest Kahoots that have been played in your, that you've played or that you've given in your class or whatever. And you can go into there, or you can just click on this hamburger menu over here and do download report. And what it's going to do, it's going to give us an Excel file. Okay, so just to see some the example Excel files that I prepared for this lecture, you can see that we have an Excel file called Lecture 1, and we have all kinds of players here and the scores they got. It also tells us how many correct answers they got, how many incorrect answers. There are a lot of other tabs here. I just erased them all for the presentation. We can see that in a different lecture, we got different names. Sometimes the same person wrote their name a bit differently. And you see that there's all kinds of scores and correct answers and incorrect answers. Well, I just want to tell you that before we go to do this, what you're supposed to tell your students, at least in the way that I wrote the script, and you can obviously configure this, is that they should write their name something like John.Smith. For instance here, John.McMahon. But the script also takes care of things if they wrote McMahon.John and all kinds of other things. And for different things that they signed in with, you'll see how it takes care of that in a second. The second thing we need to prepare is this file called students.csv. You can change the name inside the script configuration. And it's just a real simple CSV file that has one column that's called first name, one column that's called last name, and one column that's called ID. So here we actually take, I take the list of my course that I download from the university's Moodle, and I put the first name and last name and the ID of the students over here. And since I told the students to use something like joe.blow or john.smith, then this should be enough to correlate all the students' names inside the reports. But they make a lot of mistakes, and so we'll see how we're going to take care of that inside this file. So here we have my VS Code dashboard, and you can see that all we have really here is this mergecahoots.py file and mergecahoots function file. The main file is this mergecahoots.py file. And all you really need to know about it is at the beginning there's some constants like what we call the names of the files. Again, it's configured to work with the example, which you can just follow, and some thresholds, which I'll explain in a moment. The actual code itself doesn't do much. It creates some hashes and then iterates over the different report files and then writes out an Excel sheet. All of the magic really happens inside the merge Kahoot functions file, and you can go and look inside and play along with it if you want to add some features, but it should work right out of the box. Okay, what else we have inside this folder is we have the folder called students, which has that student CSV file that I showed you a moment ago, and we have a reports folder that has the Excels that I downloaded from the Kahoot website. Okay, so that's what we have now, and now I'm going to run it through the VS Code terminal, but you can do this with any Python IDE. So I'm just going to hit play here. And we can see it's reading the first Excel, the second Excel, then it's writing the merge one into this merged Kahoots folder, and it's called merged Kahoots, generated on the 22nd of February 2023. It says it's finished parsing the Kahoots, and it also says that it couldn't find the IDs for the following player names, one called Nobody, one called Joe1. Okay, so let's see what it actually spit out and what we do with that. So if we go and open this merged Kahoots file, okay, what we see here now is that we have 3 tabs below. Okay, what we get is the IDs, the first name and the last name. That was basically what we had in our students.csv file. And then the scores in lecture 1 and the scores in lecture 2. And you can see that Joe Blow didn't participate in lecture 2, and Robert John or John Robert didn't participate in lecture 2. It can tell you how many missed Kahoots there were. So this guy missed 1 Kahoot, this guy missed none, this guy missed 1, and it'll tell you the total aggregate score. Remember, it showed us before that we didn't find an ID for somebody named Nobody and somebody named Joe1. That's because they did not follow the naming convention. We can fix that, but were they the only people who didn't follow the naming convention? And the answer is not really, but I'll get to that in a second. So we also have 2 other tabs that I made. One is correct. This goes over, it's the same, as you can see, the same index, but here instead of the score, it says how many correct answers they got on the Kahoots. And it also gives me a threshold over here. So what I often do is I will give a condition that I only count the Kahoot if they got at least, say, 3 answers correct. So in the threshold over there in the constant file, I put 3 as the number I want. So Joe Blow had 1 Kahoot that he got more than 3 answers correct, and John Smith got 2 Kahoots where he had more than 3 answers correct. I found out that a better way to do it is actually take the ratio to the max score in the Kahoot. So I provided that over here. So here we have the ratio of their score to the max score, and I put the threshold at 25% of the max score in that Kahoot, and you can see that Joe Blow had 1 where he passed the 25% ratio, and John McMahon had 2 where he passed the 25% ratio. Okay, so I just wanted to go back a second to the students and show you what exactly happened there. And we'll see here that, first of all, this guy's name was McMahon John. There was somebody named Joe something and somebody named John Robert. And if I look at the students file, okay, what I can see is that the name, the first name, last name order doesn't matter, which is really nice. And it doesn't matter if I use a space or an underscore or something like that. So let's go back over there to this guy. And you can see that John McMahon was last name dot first name, and Joe something was first name space last name. So we take care of that. But if I go and I look into the second report, I'll see that this guy wrote John McMahon kind of strange, and John Smith was written without a dot in the middle, and so forth. So if I want to get past that, I go back into my students file and I add some additional entries. So I saw that John Smith wrote John Smith without the dot, and I don't know how to divide that into first name and last name and correlate it to the real John Smith. So what I do is I just add another entry here called the string that he used, and I add the same ID. As you can see, there's an ID up here, and the ID up here is the same. So I can just go and I can add more IDs for the things that we're missing. We'll see that I couldn't find the IDs for the following players: Nobody and Joe 1. So let's say we knew that Joe 1 was actually Joe something. So I could put here the name that it found. I can see it in the merge Kahoot too. So Joe 1. Okay, I'm going to take Joe 1 and I'm going to put it in the students file. And I'm going to take Joe something's ID and add it to Joe 1. Save that. Just going to close these guys again because sometimes it needs them closed to work. And I'm going to run that again. And you see that now it couldn't find Nobody, but it did find Joe 1. I can again open the student's Excel file, add Nobody here, which was the string that it didn't find, and add, for example, Joe Blow's ID there, and then save that, run it again. And now it found all the IDs there. It's an empty list over here. And let's look at the merged file that came out. And we can see here that there are none of these like floating types of IDs. In addition, if you check, it aggregated the score of those other IDs into the total score for those Kahoots that those IDs participated in. So that was the Kahoot Merger script, and you're welcome to go download it, add features and so forth, and enjoy.